Hello people, welcome back, and today we're going to be looking at everything that you need to know for your paper 1 chemistry GCSE mock. Alright, so let's jump into it.
It was a nightmare. Activate.
Right, so now that we're in a Brave browser, we're going to head to AQA. We're looking at sciences, and we got this. We're going to go for chemistry. And over here it says specification. I'll set up a link in the description so you can download this document. So once you click download, your document will look something like this. In this video, we're just going to go through 4.1 because I don't want to make these videos too long. It just takes a lot, it's very long-winded. Okay, so we're going to just go for 4.1, and I'll make another video for 4.2, 4.3, 4, and 5. Okay, so in this one specifically, you're talking about the atomic structure and the periodic table. Okay, and here are some of the things that you need to know. First of all, you got atoms, elements, and compound. Okay, all substances are made of atoms and whatnot. You have a read through this, okay, and it gives you an idea of exactly what is being asked of you. Okay, now you want to remember basically the most of the elements have their own type of atoms, and these, instead of having the long names, you give them symbols to represent them. Okay, that is pretty easy. You want to make sure that you know how to do word equations. Most of the time the problem itself will tell you this acid is reacting with this metal, and it's going to give you this as a salt and water as a result as well. And then all you need to do is take those and put them in a specific order to make a word equation. Okay, now if you're doing a higher, then you might be asked to do the chemical symbols instead of the word equation. Okay, if you're doing higher, you might be looking at writing half equations and ionic equations when appropriate. Okay, if the question asks you to do that, and I wouldn't worry that unless you're doing triple science. Okay, let me see. Write formula, balance chemical equations. I have a video on how to balance chemical equations, but most of the time you will get one question and it will be maybe 2-3 marks tops. Okay, so as long as you know it, don't waste too much time on these. There's other things that will give you a lot more marks in the test. Okay, now when we scroll down, we get to mixtures. Okay, now in the mixtures, you want to make sure that you remember some of the different methods for separating mixtures. Okay, so the difference between a mixture and a compound is that a mixture is they just mix in a container, okay, or anywhere. A compound is 2 or more different types of elements. They are chemically combined. Okay, and that is key. They make a compound. They have completely different properties than the elements that you started with. But in a mixture, they can be separated by separation techniques, but a compound can only be separated by a chemical reaction. Okay, now it has to describe, give examples of specified process of separation. Now this is important here because you might be asked this in a 6-mark question. Okay, you might be asked to talk about the example of the rock salt and the water, or you might be asked to talk about the fractional distillation of alcohol and water. Okay, because they got different boiling points, right? So you will explain first of all in the one with the rock salt that you crush the rock salt, you put it in a funnel with filter paper, you put water on it, and the salt is going to dissolve in the water, is going to go straight through, whilst the sand is going to remain behind. Then what you would do is that you get the salt solution, and then you would evaporate the water, leaving the salt by itself, and then you would dry the sand as well. Now this very commonly is a 6-mark question, and you want to pay close attention to that. You might want to watch a couple videos of how it's done, and you might want to write those down. Okay, I would start by writing in bullet points, quick bullet points. All right, if the question doesn't ask you for spelling, grammar, and punctuation, you're pretty much safe doing bullet points. But if not, you might want to do the bullet points and then start making things into sentences. That way, if you run out of time, at least you have the bullet point that will still give you some marks. Okay. Another thing that they might ask you is to explain how the separation of alcohol and water works in fractional distillation. You talk about the fractional column and how both liquids have different boiling points, and so the different temperatures will make those liquids evaporate as they travel up the fractional column. They will condense in the condenser tube, and then they can be collected separately. Okay. Now when we go to here, development of the model of the atom, what you basically want to say is that how the atom has changed from the beginning to what we have right now. Okay, two of the main things that it will ask you about this is that you want to elaborate on how the plum pudding design was changed to the atomic model design because of the gold leaf experiment, where they shot alpha particles to a gold leaf and they studied the direction of the alpha particles that got scattered. Okay. Two of the main things that got discovered during that experiment is, one, that the atom is mainly empty space, and two, there is a positive nucleus where all the alpha particles were colliding, the ones that did, and got changed direction or got bounced back. All right, so those two are the main things, and then they had a cloud of electrons. Okay. And they might give you two of the diagrams to compare if you're doing the foundation, but if you're doing the higher, they're not going to ask you to compare. They will just ask, they won't give you the designs to compare the models, the pictures. They will just tell you to compare it yourself from memory. Okay, so that's what you want to remember. Okay, you want to get those two pictures and you want to make sure you understand the difference. It's basically spot the difference between both of them. One of them has a nucleus, the other one doesn't have a nucleus. Shells, the other one doesn't have shells. One of them has neutrons, the plum pudding doesn't have any neutrons, and so on and so forth. Okay, and that's the two main things you want to remember about this section of development of the atom. Then we're looking at, see, like I mentioned, this is the two things, the difference between plum pudding and a nuclear model, and you want to look at the scatter experiment. Okay, so you might want to have a look of a couple of videos on that and see how they work. Like I said before as well, or maybe I didn't say it, you don't need to remember the names of the scientists. You don't need to remember when it was done. You just need to remember the conclusions. What did you find out about the experiment and how the experiment was conducted, okay? Now, when we're looking at relative charges and subatomic particles, we're looking at this, okay? Very often you will get a table that will ask you about the charges and the masses. In this case, you got to remember that the protons are positive. They are in nucleus and have a charge of +1, electrons -1. Okay, and the electrons are the tiny ones, they're the ones that move, and the neutrons have no charge. These two here, the protons and the neutrons, you will find them in the nucleus of the atom, and the electrons will be in the shells. Okay, let's see what it says here. Atoms number of electrons equals to the number of protons. All right, so yeah, also that's important. The number of protons is always going to be the same as the number of electrons in an atom. They cancel each other out, and that's why an atom doesn't have a charge. Okay, it hasn't become an ion yet. Now, elements have protons, different elements, a different number of protons. Yeah, so different elements, a different number of protons, and you should be able to describe the nuclear model, okay? When looking at size and mass of the atom, this is where you gotta be slightly familiar with the size of the atoms, okay? Obviously, you know that the lower in the group 1, the bigger the atom, because they have more electrons, they have more shielding, more shells, and that you want to also remember that the mass number is the big number in the periodic table, and the little number will be the atomic number in the periodic table, okay? The atomic number tells you the number of positives, and the mass number tells you the number of positives and neutrals that you have, okay? So you might get a question where they ask you what is the number of neutrons in sodium. So if you know that the positives are 11, all you have to do is take away 11 from 23, because 23, the mass number, is made of the positives, which is 11, and the neutrons, which are neutral. So you just take one from the other and you will have the answer, okay? Students should also calculate the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an atom or an ion, given the atomic number and mass. That's exactly what I just said to you, okay? You might be asked to calculate those. Now, when looking at relative atomic mass, the relative atomic mass of an element is an average value of takes account the abundance of isotopes in the element. Students should be able to calculate the relative atomic mass of an element and the percentage abundance of an isotope, okay? So first of all, an isotope, remember that an isotope is an atom of the same element that has different number of neutrons, okay? Different number of neutrons might slightly change the physical properties, but it will still be the same chemical. There will be any differences in chemical reactions, okay? Also over here in electronic structure, you gotta remember in the first shell, you can only fit 2 electrons. Every other shell after that, in GCSE, they will tell you that you can fit up to 8 electrons, okay? This here is called the electronic configuration, 2A1. So you got 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 in the second, and 1 in the last one, okay? And that's what that is referred to. They might ask you to draw a diagram and then you have to put the excess where they go, or they might give you that and tell you to write down the electronic configuration. Okay, if you're doing foundation, there might be a multiple choice question. If you're not doing foundation, you might need to just write that down. Okay, and then after that, you'll be going into the periodic table, but we'll cover that in the next video. Okay, and yeah, so hopefully you found that useful, and if you do like the video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and see you next time.